Hello, knitters and spinners. It's Lori. I'm back again. Welcome to the Intuitknit podcast. Once again, it's episode number 2. I'm coming to you from Northern Ontario, Canada. Welcome back to those of you who maybe saw my first episode. And if you're new to the episode, welcome. I am sitting here on a snowy afternoon and woke up a bit late this morning, but did get my cup of coffee, so that's great. And I'm drinking it in a mug that is actually from a place called Camp Hill, Ontario. It's a group home for people, adults with disabilities. And every year they host a craft fair, and they sell their wares. So it's a group home that has lots of different studios attached to it. So they have a woodworking shop, they have a pottery studio, weaving, and an arbory, as well as an herbal, I guess they call it an herbery, where they make room fresheners and that sort of thing. And someone near and dear to me lives at that group home, that facility. And you can find Camp Hill communities all over the world, really. So if you Googled Camp Hill communities, you could see what it's all about. But yeah, so I love this mug. It reminds me of when I used to be a kid picking up chestnuts. It's just that color, isn't it? Picking up chestnuts off the street on the way home. Anyway, yeah, so that's my cup of coffee this morning. Good morning. Okay, so I thought I would share with you a few things that I've been doing and some things that I've been thinking about. I'm hoping my camera will last because I'm kind of new to this whole thing, but here we go. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you is that I finished my second sock of the pair that I was showing you last time. And this is an afterthought heel, and so it's just got a red heel. Well, not really red, it's actually an orange color, but yeah, I quite like them. They look really neat and crisp, I think, when you put the afterthought heel in. So I'm quite happy with that. I did hear somebody on a podcast talking about heels once, and her complaint about the afterthought heel was it didn't really fold very well if you were going to put them in your drawer. So I think she must have been using it this way and trying to fold it. And what I'm discovering is if for the afterthought heel, if you want them to be neatly placed in your drawer, you can kind of fold them this way so that, yeah, so that you can have the heels kind of outward. But yeah, so I'm quite happy with those. They're nice and warm. And actually, I forgot to show you last time the type of wool it is. I think I mentioned it was a line brand. It's not an indie dye or anything. It's called just Sockies, and it's a taffy colorway. My mom, who is about 86 now, is an avid crafter, and oh my gosh, for many years she taught us to sew. She sewed her clothes. Her mother was a dressmaker. So I learned a lot of my handwork from watching her. And what she's been doing lately with her socks, because I keep her well plied with sock yarn, like a good daughter should. I've noticed that when she makes her pair of socks, what she does is she puts the ball band around the socks when she's going to give it to the person. And that way they know how to look after the socks that you've made. I thought that was a good idea. Plus it reminds you of what kind of sock yarn you've used. And in that vein, I'll just show you. She's 86 years old. And as a going concern, she's a better housekeeper than I am, honestly. But this past Christmas, she made, for all of the women in our family, which is large, she made wallets. So what she's made is this pocketbook, and inside, of course, it has all the slots for your credit cards, your change purse. It's got a zipper in it, little pockets for all the other items that you carry in a handbook, and then a little thing for the pen. And I just thought, oh my goodness, she's so proficient at sewing. And she spends a good deal of her days doing that, but She is master sewer as far as I'm concerned. I love her. Um, and what else was I going to tell you about that? Yeah. Oh, I know. There was a little pocketbook that she had made. Oh gosh, if I find it amongst all this pile of things, I will bring it out later. But what she's done for the closure of this little pouch that she's made was to use. Now maybe you've heard of this before, but she used. Do you know those metal tape measures that sort of come out and you can? They're really carpentry tape measures, but they are kind of concave, and if you pulled them out, they would stay out. You know, if you pressed a button. But what she's done is she's taken two pieces of that and inserted them into like a canal for the closure, and so that as a result, when you open it up, you can get at whatever you want, and then close it up. It'll just snap into place. How ingenious is that? Mind you, you have to waste, I guess, a little roll of carpentry measuring tape, but still, I thought it was pretty ingenious. I don't know if she thought of it. Maybe you've heard of it before, but interestingly, I haven't seen it on any other bags that people are making. So I just thought I'd mention that. I'll show it to you if I find it in this pile of things. So what have I been doing? Well, in the week, I'm trying to use Stash, as everybody is, everybody that I hear about anyway, is trying to use Stash. And so this year I pulled out from the depths of my stash a ball of yarn that I actually don't know the maker of. That's not very sophisticated of me as a podcaster, is it? But anyway, I made this hat, and what was I doing when I made this hat? I was playing chicken yarn. So see the crown? It's a little bit of a different color. And I had to use various yarns of the same gauge to make it work, but yeah, so that's what I ended up with. And in my fudging kind of way, what I thought I might do is take some purple yarn and just maybe do some duplicate stitches to be like a mock thrummed hat, just to make the top, this purple color and brown, relate to the bottom. So we'll see how that works. I might even get a pom-pom to kind of mask the fact that there's a chicken head crown here. But anyways, that's what I was finishing. And then I think I shared with you last week that I was trying to use some of my hand spun. And so I chose two balls. I showed you last week. These were the balls of hand spun merino mixes that I had gotten. I think this one is maybe the Malabrigo fiber, part merino. It might be actually totally merino. And this one I can't remember. It's been so long since I bought it, probably. This one is just a shawl that I'm making with no pattern in mind, but just doing the increases on the center spine and then the outside edges. So I thought if I ever had to name this shawl, I might just name it here and there because I don't really know where I'm going with it. What I was thinking is maybe I would increase it and make the green part to finish up, but I kind of like the color combo. It seems to be working for me. I suppose if I blocked it, you might be able to see how I'm putting in some of the yarn overs and trying to make use of colors. I like the blues and greens. Seems to work well, doesn't it? Well, I like it anyway, and that's all that matters. It's really just for me. And, as I was setting up the podcast today, I was thinking of the blues and greens, obviously, because this is a painting that I did a few years ago, and I guess I just really like blues and greens. I seem to put them together as I look back on some of the projects that I make. I seem to be putting lots of blues and greens together. And isn't it true that you seem to gravitate towards certain colors? Do you find that? I know when I went to art college years ago, one of the best exercises one of the teachers had us do was to take, you know, those painters' colors where you can flip through and you can see all the palette of colors. Well, the exercise that she had us doing was to just quickly, off the cuff, don't think about it too hard, go through that palette of colors and pick out the ones that you really just love and the ones that resonate with you. And the exercise that she had us doing really was to recreate those colors out of just primary colors and white and black, which, you know, was a painting exercise. But it was interesting. Then we had to make the palette of colors that we really found resonated with us. And so funny, all these years later, when I looked back at that palette, I realized those are still with me. What's that about? I seem to gravitate towards purples and blues, greens, of a certain tonal color. And yeah, so you might try doing that if you had access to one of those palettes of color that you use for wall paints. That would be a good exercise to do. Just make that part of your journaling, the colors that really are resonant with you. So yeah, the other thing that I'm doing, and I've got it in one of the bags that I've made for myself. I just love this color of fabric. This seemed to be kind of like a Japanese design to me. I don't know why. And I put a little tab on it and put some lining green, fuchsia green lining. Not fuchsia green, that would be chartreuse green is the green I'm thinking of. Yeah, so that's enough to fit this bag. Yeah, so I'm making a shawl, and this particular shawl is called Nurmi Lintu shawl, and you may be familiar with this shawl. I'm not quite sure. It's one of those shawls that's been quite popular on Ravelry and so on, but I can show you a picture of it here. It's a nice fingering weight shawl that can be done in one single color, or it can be, you can use for the lace paneling another type of color. And again, it's just a nice end-to-end shawl where you do some increasing and decreasing. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. And the shawl was created by Heidi Allander on Ravelry. It's there. So I'm making it from this fingering weight wool, which is 75/25 nylon. It's a sock wool. I'm going to have to get better at this, naming my wools. But I think it was maybe a blue moon color. I'll have to check that out. I'll put it on my show notes. And so this is how far I've gotten on that exercise. So I'm really just starting it out. So I'm coming up to the lace paneling part. So I'm really looking forward to how that might turn out. Yeah. So there's that purple again in my life. Seems to be cropping up. I may actually, for the lace paneling parts, use this yarn. This is an Ancient Arts yarn, superwash wool 75/25. And if you haven't been to that Ancient Arts website, it's a Canadian company, check it out, especially if you're a pet owner, because what she has on her website is a lot of depictions through her yarn colors, the different breeds of cats and dogs. And I believe a portion of her proceeds from the purchase of yarns goes towards charities benefiting stray and abandoned cats. So I thought that was kind of neat. This is a nice ginger color. I believe that's what it's actually called. Orange tabby is the color. So I thought orange and that lovely mauve color might work well together. So we'll see how that goes. So that's what I'm doing to start some projects. Not that I have any business starting a project. I've got so many on the go, it seems. I wanted to show you Last week I was talking a little bit about some of the hand spun that I've done and looking for projects destined to become something. And I wanted to show you this book that I had got probably, I don't know, 2-3 months ago now. And it's the Best of Jane Austen Knits, and it's by Amy Clark Moore. I just love this book. It's got a lot of very classic designs, I think, and very reminiscent, of course, of that period of time. And what I thought I might do is use some of my hand spun, because I'm always looking for projects that might be suitable for that sort of thing, and simple projects that I don't have to think too much about. And this one's called A Sensible Shawl. So that's a picture. I don't know if you can see it. I'm showing it very well there. Yeah, it ties around the back, which I love, because oftentimes when wearing a shawl, you either have to wear a pin with it or wrap it around with the peak at the front. I've been thinking about wearing shawls because it seems to me, as I see all these beautiful shawls on Ravelry and Instagram, that something's lost when we put them on around our necks. We go to such effort to create these beautiful masterpieces of color and design, and then when we tie them around that way, you know, it's not you can't really appreciate what's gone into it. So I kind of like the idea in this shawl where you can wrap it around. It's a bit like a sweater, perhaps, and you know, you can maybe see some of the yarn that you're using. So that one was a very nice design. And there was also in here another beautiful thing that I thought might use up some portions of hand spun, and that's this vest. You can see that, but that vest that sort of has a little bit of a tab that comes under the bust line, and it's just a DK weight that they're suggesting. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll try that. So the hand spun, I think I told you about the fleece that I had spun quite some time ago from the Polworth fleece that I bought, and it was a chocolate brown fleece that I had flick carded and spun up. It's very rustic, and it's probably close to a worsted weight, I'm thinking, and I've got probably 5 skeins at least of this. So I thought I would give that shawl a try and see what comes with that. I'm thinking the design is so simple that it will be well matched to that shawl, and you know, some of the rustic nature of it might lend itself to a shawl that's tied in that way. So we'll see how that works. On that same then, I'm making, or have been making, and got a bit stalled on this hand spun sweater. I made a bag for it in lovely green color. I love that design. Isn't that pretty? And the lining is sort of a blue. There's the blues and greens again. So this is a hand spun sweater that I'm in the process of doing. It doesn't have a pattern, but what I'm doing is just kind of using the same technique that I learned in one of the other sweaters by Elizabeth Zimmerman, the recipe that I mentioned last time. I'm just basically using the gauge swatch for the hand spun and trying to figure out what my circumference is around the bodice, and then working up into the underarms and making the sleeves. So this is what I've got so far. It's like a grass green color, and I had to start out a little bit with another color. I'm trying to improvise a little bit with the colors. So the ribbed band around the bottom of the sweater will have more of an orangey kind of appearance. That's okay with me. I don't mind it. But what I was thinking is I was going to do a steek. So I don't know if that's going to turn out to be a disaster as a steek, but what I was thinking is I might even just use my sewing machine and go along both sides of it. Sew up a small tab of twill tape, and that way I won't have any tears about this, because if I cut it, then it'll just be secured that way. But I was thinking maybe I might use even a zipper for this sweater. It is a fairly heavy fabric, so I don't know what you guys think about that. Have you ever used a zipper for a heavy sweater? And if you have, were you happy with the results? Maybe you could message me and let me know. I don't really want to put a button band on it. I'm working away to try to complete this sweater. I've done part of the sleeves. So I've done two sleeves to that point in time. And you can see by the ribbing area, I'm trying to duplicate some of the color themes of the bottom of the sweater on the body. So it won't look too out of place, I think, if I match those colors to the lower part of the sleeves, as I have done on the body. So, but the kicker is, and this is part of just being one of those devil-may-care knitters. What I did was I knit up the portions of hand spun that I had that were that color to this point in time, only to find that, oh, I don't have enough yarn. So what I did was I ordered from a great place, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So I ordered these fibers to duplicate the color work in the sweater that I've already got partly done. So it's a labor of love, this sweater, because it's not like I have all the yarn sitting in front of me. So I'm going to have to duplicate the gauge of the yarn again. But so I bought these 3 colors, and this is from a place called the Fiber Garden, and it's a Canadian company. They're right near St. Catharines, Ontario, in a small town named Jordan. And I have been there. They're lovely people. John and Alan have the company. And they're just so nice. They're very knowledgeable about the fibers, and the service is great, because when I ordered it online, I think maybe 4 days later, I had it in my hands in the mail. I just couldn't believe how quick they were to send it out to me. And so that was great. But I have been lingering, trying to imagine myself spinning it up now, because I've got a few other projects on the go. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend these 3 fibers in various ways. And in the sweater, there is just the odd little touch of turquoise. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to, so that's from the Fiber Garden. Yeah. So even for American viewers of the podcast, it would be a great place to go, because it is near the Canadian American border. So if you were crossing, the dollar would be on your side these days to pick that up. And I also have some hand-dyed roving that I'm going to mix with some of that. So that might be a little too dark in some areas, that the dark forest green may not work, but I may be able to take out some areas that will work, just so that I make sure I get enough for the bodice then. Well, you can see I'm just a person that flies by the seat of their pants. But you know what? That gives everybody else a lot of freedom, doesn't it, when they see someone like me trying to work my way through it. So, yeah. Purchases this week. Well, Valentine's Day is coming, isn't it? So I did go to my local yarn store, and that's a place in where I live. It's called True North Yarn. If you're coming to Northern Ontario, it would be on the way to Cottage Country. There's 2 local yarn stores in town. That's just one of them. I'll probably mention the other one in some future podcasts. But so I was looking in their yarn bin, and I found this Osterman yarn. It's a sock weight, 75/25. It's a German yarn, and I don't think it has a colorway listed on it, but it's a beautiful pink. That's not quite the color. That's a little too wow. The actual color is a little more red, but it does have, I don't know if this is, yeah, it's a little bit too red. So anyway, so that, I thought I might start a pair of socks in that. And then, you know, if people have yarn stores and they're completing something as a example of what can be done with yarn, that's just such a great idea. Because when I walked into the yarn store, I wasn't intending to buy anything, but of course when you see something being knitted up and you just think, oh, I love that, it's great. It's difficult sometimes when you see skeins of yarn to imagine how they look knit up, and I don't see examples of that on many websites where they'll provide a swatch of what something looks like, but personally I would appreciate it, because it really is a seller when you can see how something will look at the end. And of course I bought this lovely green color. It's Lang J-Wall Magic Superwash yarn, 7525. And she was knitting this up. It's a single ply, and I asked her, you know, how would this wear, being a single ply, how would it wear in socks? And her idea was that it probably would wear pretty well because it has a felting that might occur as a result of wearing it, which you might not get with applied yarn. So I'm not going to actually make socks out of it. I think what I'm going to do is just make some fingerless mitts and other projects. I do have another ball of this. Someone else gave me a lovely blue color. That's the same type of yarn. So who knows? Maybe I can do some color work with the two of them. So that's great. I am such a thrift store, what you call me? Well, thrift store hunter, I guess. Many times on a weekend I'll be looking for things to do. I'm in the care of somebody who likes to go around town, and we go to all kinds of haunts on the weekend. So one of the places that we like to go is to the secondhand shops and look for things that we might like, and so we do some purchases that way. I can't believe some of the things that I find. Sometimes I think people in those stores don't know the value of things. So I wanted to show you what I picked up for $4 at the thrift store. $4, can you imagine? Alice Darmore's book of Fair All Knitting. And I just love this book. Not only is it a classic, but it just has such beautiful illustrations of some of the color work that you can do. And it's so inspiring. Again, with my love of purple, don't you just love this photograph? Isn't that the most beautiful thing? Look at the color work on that. Yeah. So I just was feeling so excited. I was almost standing in the lineup thinking, don't look at the price, don't look at the price, because, you know, there's a price on the back that doesn't reflect the $4 price they charged me. So I was surprised to get that. And that's a hard copy, so yeah, I was just so lucky to get that. Now, winter's been kind of cold here. We've had a lucky run of days where, you know, it hasn't been too bad. But in those nights when it becomes really cold in northern Ontario, I want to bundle up with my friend, my hot water bottle, and just keep warm. But lately I've been thinking and imagining, you know, when I was a kid, we used to keep warm by, you know, having these lovely house coats and nightgowns that my mom, the sewer, would make for us. So every Christmas, all the girls in our family would receive a house coat, nightgown that my mother had made. And I just remember them being so cozy and warm, and you know, it's just a great thing to put on after a hot bath when you're feeling the chill. So I've got this vintage pattern of one of the nightgowns that I'm hoping to make. So I'm hoping to make this one, and I'm not going to put the lace in, but it's going to be one of those nightgowns that you can put on and feel very warm. I remember good fond memories of nursing babies and Christmas mornings wearing this kind of a nightgown. So I thought I would give it a try. So I've chosen a flannelette that I'm going to use for that. And yeah, so it's nice and soft. So I'll be busy doing that. I have made a few project bags to give away to friends over the Christmas, and just doing knit nights occasionally. We do take our project bags with us, so I'm trying to make a stash of project bags that I can use as quick giveaways, either for this podcast or for gifts for friends. So I made this one, and yeah, nothing fancy. I didn't actually even put a pull tie on it, but I just thought I'm enjoying doing it. And these are nice and big, so I can either put a sock project in or a shawl project. Yeah, I really like the fabrics. Seems like a lot of fabrics are on sale lately, so I may have to go out and, explore and see what's out there. So I opened up a Ravelry group for this podcast, and I'm hoping that some people will visit it just to do some chatter. Let me know if there's anything that you would like me to talk about. If you are interested in any of the areas of Northern Ontario, I would be happy to talk to you about that. Anything about painting that maybe does interest you. A lot of people that I know that I have talked to over the years about painting have told me that they have a secret desire to do painting, but they feel very intimidated by the whole process, maybe some of the materials and that sort of thing. And I'd love to support anybody who's got that secret wish to do any painting. It is so enjoyable, and it's like any other craft. If you try to gag the inner judge that sometimes prevents us from exploring different mediums and different things in our lives, you can do great things. I originally started painting when I was probably a young adult working, and I had gone to some art classes in Toronto. I would spend the evenings doing life drawing and that sort of thing. And it evolved over the years until finally I left my profession to go to art college, much to the confusion and bewilderment of some of the people that I knew. They kind of couldn't imagine why I would leave a profession and go to art college full time, but it was just one of those things that I had to do, and it took me over, and so I ventured out that way. So I took 3 years of life going through the art college, and great things happened to me, and so I had a studio for many years after that. Even when my children were quite young, I would have a studio that I would go to in the evening hours, sell my paintings, had shows and that sort of thing. So one of the best books that I found, if you have a desire to explore that and you would like to see what you're capable of making, try the book Betty Edwards. It's called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And, in everyone's life there's a book that really, changes your thinking about a particular thing. And for me, for my art, that was a book that was game-changing for me. Up until then, I was just sort of dabbling in it. But when I read that book and did some of the exercises in that book, I realized how painting is just like anything else. You develop a skill, and there are people, of course, that are, have a natural talent. But for the most part, it is a struggle, and learning how to see things is the most primary thing that you can develop when you're trying to create visual arts. I've used a lot of the things that I've learned over the years in painting to look at other crafts and mediums. Even in terms of color work, when you do fair owl knitting, what you can do is transfer some of the skills that you have learned about color in art making, in visual, like two-dimensional art, to transfer that knowledge to make Fair Isle designs. I did hear someone on a podcast talking about the use of black and white photography when you're trying to develop Fair Isle knitting, to try to estimate what the impact of certain colors and certain values of colors will do in the finished product. And I was mindful of some of the exercises I'd learned in terms of what colors have values, how they transfer into different values. And I may show you next time a painting that I did using a black and white photograph to create a painting that was actually in color. But it's that same idea of using your eye to estimate what the value of a color is and how it will transfer into the finished product. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense to you, but for me that was quite a revelation I'd had when I started making two-dimensional art, was exploring painting and pastel colors. So as a result, I took many black and white photographs and used them to recreate images. And the thing that struck me was that it really doesn't matter what color you use, as long as you get the value correct. So if you were, for instance, drawing a face, and you were working from a black and white photograph, and you had some sense of what the original colors, what their values were, you could create a face that would make sense in terms of realism or artistic merit, I guess, just knowing what the values of those colors are. So I'll show you a little bit about that. Maybe I can even relate it to color work in some future podcast, but yeah, I just thought I would mention that in this podcast today. So anyway, please go to the Ravelry Intuitknit podcast group and join me for any discussion and chatter back and forth. Please share any projects that you're working on. If you're creating a garment out of handspun, I would love to see some of the projects that you are working on. It's very inspiring to see what people can do out of their handspun, and I love to see some of the patterns that people are using these days. So feel free to share that. And so I'll probably be podcasting another couple of weeks. I hope that you have a great week, and bye for now.